chop all these siege tanks now. Those drones really desperately trying to run for their lives. There's Wednesday Night
vVv gaming is still sort of king. There's a lot of places where you can get down that proxy pylon, work your way up to the high ground, and Rocker has a very interesting defense against 4-gate, so he typically uses a pylon close to his ramp and then places gateways around his ramp to really limit the amount of space that an opponent has to warp up there. I'd like to see that play come into play here if he does face a 4-gate, but I'll let you intro the players here as we do get started with Game 2 of Wednesday Night Starcraft.
Alright, so for Game 2, Rocker is spawning as the pretty purple Protoss at what I'll call the 5 o'clock position. Meanwhile, since this is the cross-spawn version, we have Kodak spawning as the yellow Protoss at the 10 o'clock position. And this does have gold mineral patches, so I take it back. My apologies. Apparently, there are still gold minerals here, at least in the MLG universe of Antigua Shipyard. It's been quite some time since I've seen those anyways, as the game does get underway. And Rocker, interestingly enough, not building that pylon close to his ramp as you suggested he would in the previous matchup.
Well, typically it was the second or third pylon that he placed by the ramp. Once he did scout, he saw the chrono boost and the timing of the gas and the cybernetic score and things. So I imagine he could still do that strategy. Just the placement of that initial pylon, he's going to be able to place buildings close to the ramp. We'll see if he does that. Yeah, there's one gateway going down a little bit closer to the ramp. So that could still come into play here. Both players opening up very similarly with that pylon right close to the nexus, saving himself mining time, short distances there, and then a gateway close to that ramp. One difference so far is Rocker has sent out that early probe scout, and that's a questionable decision on my, or in my opinion, just because you know where your opponent is starting. You don't have to check all 4 starting locations or all 3 other starting locations. So he's going to be in his opponent's base very, very early, and I wonder if he's going to get valuable information that early.
Well, the only reason why you would scout out your opponent this early is to make sure that your opponent is playing standard, as opposed to hunting for cheese. If you know that where your opponent is, you could simply walk into your opponent's base and say, okay, do I spot the gateway? Do I spot the pylons? Is anything suspicious? If nothing is suspicious, then I am good and I am golden. Rocker did lose some precious mining time though, so he is a little bit delayed in terms of his cybernetic score, and he may be delayed in terms of his assimilator as well. Another variation is that we see Kodak opting to go for a zealot first. Meanwhile, Rocker has yet to train anything, and Rocker has also done an assimilator block on Kodak as well.
Yeah, we do see a lot of chrono boosts saved by Kodak, so he might be saving that for his warp gate tech. And there goes the first chrono going down on that warp gate, and a chrono on a zealot and stalker as well. He wants to get these units out quickly to take down that assimilator, which Rocker was able to place there. And so Rocker places down that assimilator, really going to delay his opponent's gas mining. But with that early scout and that assimilator, he's going to be a little bit behind mineral-wise. So we'll see whether Kodak is able to eke out an advantage because of that. We'll see another chrono boost does go down on the cybernetic score for Kodak, and checking out the harvester count is 21 to 21. Things shaping up pretty evenly here. The Rocker with that gas steal definitely changes the dynamic of this early PvP.
Yeah, one thing I'm not quite sure about is if Rocker knows that he only has 2 probes on his second assimilator. He did try to get that additional gas early, but he's not really harvesting it all too much. He does have a fair amount of probes out on the field. Perhaps he needs more minerals. He just transferred 1 more into there as well, as we now see 2 additional gateways warping in from Kodak. So Kodak will be going into 3-gate. Will he be getting up a 4th gate, or will he go for a robotics facility or a Twilight Council?
Looks like he is bringing a probe across the field, so might try for a little bit of aggression. And like I said, Rocker placing that gateway right at the top of his ramp, so he's going to be able to use those early sentries and ranged units to try to deny his opponent sight on that high ground. And we'll see whether Kodak is able to do any damage here. His 2 gateways are going to finish. His warp gate tech about to finish as well. He has not had any early gas. Well, actually, he hasn't spent a lot of early gas, so he will be able to get a few warp-ins of stalkers. I thought maybe he would be a little bit limited there because of that gas steal, but Rocker's spending a lot of gas himself on sentries, and now pushing out here, going to be able to find these units and going to start focusing down these stalkers. He needs to get back up into his base. He's going to lose at least a stalker, perhaps. A nice force field there, traps the units at the bottom of the ramp, and he might get a free zealot here. Does an excellent job so far at microing these units, but all very low shields.
Yeah, that was really just, I think, poor play on the part of Kodak. Kodak could have easily focused down that Stalker, didn't go for the Stalker. You saw 2 low hit point sentries, and now those sentries will be getting their shields back up once more, and these Zealots are not going to really be able to do much. You're going to see perhaps another force field on the ramp, and Rocker with 4 sentries, and all of them have been in play for quite a while. He's going to be in a very nice position. He can just chain force fields. And I think Kodak realizes that he needs to pack up and go home because there's not much he can really do.
Yeah, Kodak for a little bit there was posturing that he would go for an expansion, but Rocker's actually been able to sneak a few Zealots into the mineral line of Kodak. How many probes has he been able to kill? Looks like just 1, so not really worth it economically there for Rocker, but at least forces his opponents to play a little bit more defensively, perhaps keep those units at home. He was already on his way back, and now we'll see whether Kodak goes for that expansion and whether Rocker follows.
All right, so Rocker now getting up that expansion at the 8-minute mark. He does have a lot of sentries and stalkers still. We can see that the robotics facility is up, and an observer is already making its way across the field as well. Stalkers are going to find the proxy pylon that Rocker set up, and this is turning out to be a macro style game, as Rocker is currently supply blocked 53 over 50. And now we see Kodak going into a Templar Archives.
Yeah, very interesting, and he actually chose Charge instead of Blink on that Twilight Council, so might be going for Charge Lot Archon, and we'll see how Rocker is able to defend against that. It's a very good early and mid-game, not early because it's hard to get Archons that early, but a good mid-game tactic in PvP or strategy, but it sort of falls off as you get into the late game and as your opponent transfers to Colossi. We do see that Rocker has gone for the robotics facility. I don't think he has the bag quite yet, but he's going for a Twilight Council, and if he's able to use Blink and also a little bit of Sim City here, he could defend against this quite easily if he's able to really cut down the opportunity for those Zealots to charge and those Archons to get in onto his units.
All right, so Zealots and Stalkers now making their way in. They are going to be trying to hit over here at the 3 o'clock position. We do see Archons now merging, and this has always been a question, whether or not you should merge Archons from High Templars or Dark Templars. What's your personal preference on that?
I think it really depends on what else you're going for. Since he does have charge lots, he's able to use the higher gas regular old Templar to get his Archons. If he was going for more of a Stalker-based composition where he needed that gas, then DTs, which are a little cheaper gas-wise, might be the smarter move. So I think it just depends on what other units you're going for besides Archons.
All right, here's the engagement now. We can see Zealots and Stalkers trying to push their way in. Rocker creating a little bit of Sim City right there. It's something that you don't normally see, but nice placement. And those units would not be able to walk up that ramp at all. And now Kodak once again packing up his bags and going home. And this has been a little bit of a stalemate going back and forth as Kodak now goes into a double forge and perhaps is going to start those upgrades.
Yeah, I mean, every time Kodak pushes out to try a little bit of aggression, Rocker's just able to counter him with early force fields and SimCity, or this more mid-game SimCity. He saw the composition, Charge Lot Archon, just set up some gateways and pylons, put your Stalkers behind it, and does quite well, especially with force fields as well. Archons don't have that much range. Obviously, Zealots are melee units, so Rocker pretty strong play here, smart in his countering of what his opponent's going for.
All right, so we'll see what's going to be happening next. I believe the Observer, do they know about that proxy pylon up on the high ground? No. Kodak has still been able to hide that there at the 3 o'clock starting location. It looks as though there is one Zealot sitting at a Zelnaga tower. It quickly gets the memo and decides to retreat and go back home. As we see, Rocker is at 89 over 100 food. The Stalkers may be able to catch up to that Zealot there. One blink would do it, but there are a lot of Zealots coming back around, and there's the charge. Zealots now coming in to reinforce, but the Immortals are not going to be that effective, as the Immortals are only going to be hitting Zealots and Archons primarily, and Immortals only deal 20 damage per pop.
Not quite sure what Rocker's transition is going to be here. He got up his own Templar Archive, so he's going for Archons as well. But again, like you said, he's got these Immortals, he's got these Sentries. Not going to be too great in a heads-up fight. And 1-1 about to finish for Kodak. So if Rocker doesn't engage before that 1-1 and doesn't get it up any Colossi, I feel like he might be a little bit at a disadvantage as we go into this late game.
Yeah, we'll see what's going to be happening next. As we're seeing what all of the Archons and Immortals and Stalkers trying to do a bit of a push here. This is just that ball of units trying to make their way out. Zealots are going to engage. There is one Archon against one Archon. The Immortal Stalkers are blinking back. The Archon in the front is taking a little bit too much damage. And now Kodak, with Stalkers and Zealots, may be able to come out on top of this. The Immortals are not able to focus down onto the Stalkers, but the Archons are not that effective against Immortals either. Who's going to come out as the Stalkers are simply trying to retreat now? And it looks like Kodak taking the upper hand, but Zealot's going to try to come back and counter. But Rocker now down by 15 food.
Yeah, he's going to have to play back on his heels a little bit and get up maybe a little bit more of an economy. Kodak 52 to 42 right now, so he's got the lead in the economy, and then he's also got a little bit of an upgrade advantage. 2-2 on the way for Kodak. We do have a robotics bay on the way for Rocker, but I feel like that's going to be a little bit too late. Kodak's going to be able to push out here, have a nice timing attack with 1-1, and be very strong with 2-2 before Rocker is really able to get out enough Colossi to defend against this.
Yeah, Rocker right now, all he can do is just add in the Archons to try to deal with the Zealots that he saw. If he had somehow saved the Immortals to deal with the Stalkers later on and utilize their range, it might be a little bit better. Kodak still warping in more and more High Templars, merging Archons, and we're going to see 4 Archons in play in this next push. And it is going to be 3 bases to 2. Kodak with still the slight economic advantage. 6 Harvester advantage for Kodak, 54 compared to 48.
Rocker trying to get a little bit cute here. He's going for Warp Prism and also going for Double Forge. So he's going to try to match the upgrades of his opponent, but he's going to be very far behind. 2-2 almost going to finish before 1-1 even starts for Rocker. So we do see that Kodak pulling back a little bit here. He is working on that pylon at the third for Rocker, so he knows he's ahead a little bit at this point. He just needs to get up that third. He's got the economic advantage by 8 Harvesters. As long as this Warp Prism doesn't do too much damage to him, he should be pretty comfortable in this game. But this is going to give Rocker an opportunity to get out those Colossi. He hasn't started production quite yet. He doesn't have any on the field, in fact, and he is just sort of posturing midfield, though I don't think he wants to fight this.
All right, we'll see what's going to happen. One Zealot charges straight into a group of Archons. Really, really bad play there, as the Warp Prism now going to try to do perhaps a straight drop into the Fog of War here. And if they're able to just unload, perhaps the Zealots will be able to make their way in. It looks as though a lot of the gateways are currently on cooldown, and here we go. We are going to get 3 Zealots. Zealots are now being dropped, and Zealots do have charge. The Warp Prism needs to warp in some additional units, perhaps behind the others, as we are now going to see another engagement. So the Zealots are battling it out. 3 Zealots versus 2. Who's warping in? Rocker's now warping in more and more units, and coming on top. Probes trying to come in as well, and Rocker losing a little bit of his Zealots, as now more and more units are still coming in on both sides, and it looks like Kodak forced to retreat with some of his probes.
Yeah, but 2-2 just finished for Kodak, so it's 2-2 to 0-0. These Zealots of Kodak just going to be more cost effective, and we do see Rocker try to use that distraction in the main to get an attack at the front door of Kodak, but Kodak did a nice job of not overreacting. He just warped in there. Sure, he lost some probes. Rocker's now killed 10 and evened things up a little bit economically, but Kodak didn't lose any bases. He still got 3 base to 2 base, and now Rocker almost forced to push all in here, and Kodak has a 30 food advantage.
Yeah, right now I would have liked to have seen Rocker perhaps take down the destructible rocks at the 9 o'clock position and then charged up from that side. There would still be a ramp. The Archons would be able to push through, but if the Archons were a bit out of position, perhaps you could split up the army and then force the units to do a bit of a retreat. The Stalkers do have Blink, and I don't know if they're going to... Yes, they are going to try to go up there onto the high ground and now focus down more probes again. So Stalkers going at it. One Stalker is going to get taken down. Zealots are trying to warp in as well. It looks as though the Stalkers may do a little bit of a blink dance back and forth. Rocker losing 1 Stalker already, and perhaps not knowing that the 2-2 upgrades are so much superior. As the Stalkers are now dancing around, it looks as though those 3 Zealots should be able to finish off those Stalkers, as even a Photon Cannon joining in, and Stalkers still just trying to blink around, perhaps utilizing their superior numbers against Zealots as they're coming in one at a time.
Yeah, Rocker actually had canceled his earlier robotics bay at some point. We said that it was coming in, so he just remade it, and now two robotics facilities double pumping Colossi, but he's going to be behind in the Colossi count, and now we see a big engage in the center of the field, War of the Worlds, though only one side has those all-important Colossi. Quick GG by Rocker there. He knows he was behind the majority of the game. He tried lots of little cute things to catch back up, but he was never able to do enough damage. Kodak handled them all quite well. And Rocker, I think, just made one fatal mistake there in engaging in that mid game with his own Zealot Archon against the opposing Zealot Archon mix and not going straight to Colossi.
Yeah, I think that problem coupled with the fact that he was just so far behind on upgrades. If Rocker
Right.
didn't engage, he wasn't even starting 2-2 upgrades, and Kodak would have had those important 3-3 upgrades. Archons were dealing more damage. Archons and Zealots were able to take more damage. And when you have even food count, but upgrades are just that much of a disparity, then you can pretty much count your Zealots out of that fight.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't know why he went for the same mirror composition. Zealot Archon is not all that effective if you're able to SimCity against it, and a lot of times you just SimCity and then you defend against their initial push, but you have your robotics up earlier than them, so then you're pushing out 4 to 5 Colossi before they have more than one or two, and you're able to instantly toast those charge lots, and then you're able to clean up the Archons, and you have a pretty nice timing there where you can push in and your opponent doesn't have Colossi, but instead sort of match the tech of his opponent, though he was behind in getting up Archons and in charge, so, and he was behind in upgrades, like you said. It was basically trying the same strategy against his opponent, but he was behind in